There's such a need for ongoing learning, for continuous learning, because especially in the world of communications, marketing, technology, the things that we're doing here today, things are changing daily. Things are completely different. There is no way for us to be able to have studied this or be educated in what we're doing here today on a formal basis. Welcome to the Workable Show. My name is Maynard as always. We are a community of lifelong learners who are obsessed about building a meaningful, creative career and doing the work that matters to us. And this is our podcast. And today I'm joined by my good friend, Rupert Conradie. Rupert's a friend of mine for almost the past 10 years, for almost a decade, even longer, I guess. I didn't even get to count. I got to know him from working alongside his wife, Liana, who's always also a brilliant creative, just like Rupert and myself. What immediately struck me from Rupert is his keen sense of what people need in any given moment, how he manages to intuitively tune into the deeper pain points of people. It's one of the first things I noticed about you, Rupert. This obviously translates very well in a business context. He has managed to capitalize on this incredible talent when it comes to understanding clients, advising them on what they should do next, what their next step should be in business or even in life, and just generally building long-standing, trustworthy relationships and adding consistent value in the process. So that has been my first impression of Rupert. It's my lasting impression of Rupert, even to this day, as he himself has also transitioned across his career. Nowadays, he's been working with local and international online entrepreneurs, but I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that himself in a moment. Today, Rupert is not just my guest, he's co-hosting the Workable with me. We'll be asking each other questions, and you'll get to learn a little bit about me and about what the show is about as well. It's long overdue, but we have the opportunity for that today. Rupert, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh man, it is such a pleasure to be here, Maynard. I'm so excited. Thank you for inviting me to be your guest and co-host today.
Yes, of course.
I love doing these kind of things, and I just love going live and connecting with as many people as possible. This is something I love, and doing this together with you, yeah, it's long overdue. So I'm super excited today. So yeah, let's looking forward to it, and let's make it happen.
So what I thought, tell me what you think. What I thought is I prepped some questions. So I've got some things I definitely want to ask you, things that I'm interested in, things that I know I and the listeners can learn from you. Maybe you can ask me a couple of questions as well. So maybe I'll do one and then you'll do one. And if the conversation just flows and if something comes up, if that's okay with you. All right. So, I mean, what I said is I alluded to a little bit to this idea that you have gone through a couple of career transitions yourself. I mean, our community is all about lifelong learning, building creative careers, things that matter, doing it in meaningful ways. So why don't you just give us like a super short overview of how did your story pan out? Did you go the traditional route? Did you go and study at university and you kept that one job, then you worked the corporate ladder, or like how did it work out for you?
I'm a bit of a rebel, Maynard, so I did everything the opposite way, right? So I believe if a dead fish goes downstream, it takes a live fish to go upstream, right? So I want to be a live fish. So I went the absolute other route, and for me, I always like to go where the puck is moving, right? So it's like, where's the industry going? Where can I go? Where can I grow? I think that's the most important part. So just give you a quick example, like, COVID strike, it's 2020. Everything changed, right? So I looked, okay, where's the world going to go to? Online. So that's where I went, Maynard. I went straight to, okay, who's the best in the world at doing things online? Who can I connect with? And that's exactly what I did. So I always try to go and look at the trends and then follow that. And instead of following, just being one step ahead and just move towards that. So that's me. Like, I get bored very quickly, so moving around in industries fascinates me. So that's just a quick little example of the last couple of years.
Well, I mean, that is fascinating, because what I'm seeing is more and more people who actually follow that type of career path. It's non-linear. It doesn't follow the traditional route, but it does come with certain anxieties. I think, like, I'm just thinking for myself, I've transitioned a couple of times in my career, and every single time I'm hit with imposter syndrome. I'm thinking, will I be able to make this? Am I going to start from the bottom again? I mean, how did that work out for you?
So the big thing there, man, with that is, yes, 100%. Like, we all feel that emotion. We all feel that sort of like, okay, imposter syndrome. Can I do this? But the beautiful thing for me is I know I only grow when I'm outside of my comfort zone. It's just what it is, you know. So it might be painful, but that's when I grow. So I always tell someone, at least do one scary thing a year for yourself, because that's where you're going to grow. So to me, that's exactly what I do. I go, it's like, okay, this is going to scare me. I know nothing about the online space. Now I'm going to grow. And that's exactly what happens. Every time I do that, I can look back and go, yeah, there's a lot of growth that happened in my life. So to me, that's part of it. That's definitely part of it. But something.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I was just thinking for you, man, like, you know, you've been in a creative space, you know, for a long time. You've been a mentor to my wife as well. You know, she's still like asked that question, like, okay, if I just speak to Maynard, like, what would his input be?
Oh my goodness, that's a dangerous. It's a slippery slope. Don't do that.
But then maybe tell me about your transition, like into like KRAFT Learning Lab. Like, what was that transition like?
So I mean, you know a little bit of the story, but just for the people that's tuning in, I came from a legal background. I studied as a lawyer, was qualified as a lawyer, did my candidate attorneyship, if you will, at a divorce and insolvency practice. And then did a 180-degree turn and started working as a volunteer at a performing arts company as a dancer and a musician and an actor. And even to this day, that was probably the scariest thing I ever did. But it didn't feel scary at the time. It was just like, I just did it. And I was young. I was 25 years old at the time. And from there, it was a short jump to to being an arts coordinator, full-time arts coordinator, then working in public relations, finding myself in the communication and marketing space. As they say, one thing led to another. And that's why I ended up in a creative agency like KRAFT Learning Lab as a brand strategist, strategic communications director. And that's what I'm doing at the moment. And as I worked in that industry with people, I realized, oh my goodness, there's such a need for ongoing learning, for continuous learning, because especially in the world of communications, marketing, technology, the things that we're doing here today, things are changing daily. Things are completely different. There is no way for us to be able to have studied this or be educated in what we're doing here today on a formal basis. So I think for me, trying to facilitate that for people, helping myself, even just educating myself a little bit, not just in new fields of study, but even in how to learn, was an incredible journey for myself. And then being able to guide other people to say, you have to be a lifelong learner. Like, if you want to build a future for yourself, if you want to build a meaningful career, especially if you're a creative and in the creative industry, you have to understand what it means to be a lifelong learner, how to embrace a lifestyle of continuous learning. So that has been a little bit my story into KRAFT Learning Lab. KRAFT Learning Lab is just my current embodiment of how to do that in a meaningful way, accessible way rather, for people out there.
Yeah. So with that then, Maynard, I mean, for me that's interesting because, you know, it's as if this thing about I'm going to university, I'm going to study something. I've got a lot of respect for people that went through that. That's incredible. But that continuation of learning, I mean, looking at design, right, as an example, right? I studied to be a graphic designer. I'm doing logos, I'm doing print, I'm doing whatever. Now people are talking about UX and UI. That wasn't like 10 years ago. That weren't in a curriculum when you went to study, right? So what
it didn't exist.
How do you, right? So would you agree that, I mean, obviously for years I keep on learning, you know, and that's sort of the key. Working with creators yourself, like, how do you guys ensure, you know, like that you guys do like stay on board of what's going on? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is definitely it's not about the specific course that you're doing or being enrolled in a specific, have a subscription somewhere where you get fed content, the latest trends or skills, or being up to date with the latest apps. Those are the things that come eventually. But I think the first step for me is to be tuned into, to have the mentality of a growth mindset, to know that I don't know anything, that the world is changing super fast, that I only have this small handful of skills, that I need to keep adding to my skill set if I want to stay relevant in the workplace, and that I must be willing to become a beginner again on a monthly basis on a new topic. not because not for the fun of it, but because I want to be able to add consistent value, make a difference to my clients, to my world, to myself. So that, I think that for me is the first thing. And that's what we talk with other creators probably the most about, is let go of this idea that you studied once and now you're going to get to do work for the next 60 or 50 or 60 years. You have to understand, or being able to juggle learning and doing, and then learning from doing, and then taking stock again and reflecting and learning something new, whether it is from a course, whether it is from the people you work with, from clients. All life is for learning. So I think that for us is the biggest thing. Okay. So I mean, enough about me for the moment. We'll get back to some of that for now. But so you are doing some incredible work that you yourself couldn't have studied for. I mean, there wasn't degrees for doing the kind of things that you're doing with people in the online space. So tell me a little bit about how does your day look? What is it that you're doing now? How do you add value to the people that you serve on a daily basis? What does that look like?
I mean, you're 100% correct. If you told me, like, even 5 years ago, you're going to speak to someone in the US or Australia, or sometimes some random island, may not where I've never even heard the name of the island. I had to go Google it. And the person speaking to me, sitting in South Africa, I would have said, like, well, that doesn't make sense. Who would want to speak to me? But that's the first thing, is knowing your value, knowing what you can accomplish and how you can help. So for me, the big thing is I know my strengths because I've done a lot of work on myself looking at that. So when I help business people, man, the interesting thing, it's not about the things that you would think, right? About accounting and managing money and being a good leader. Where I help people, most of the times, you'll actually be surprised. It's about uncertainty and fear that people have. It's me as a leader, me as a person starting a business. Can I do this? Right? It's almost that self-doubt. So, I mean, I almost feel like a counselor when I speak to people. And I speak to people all over the world, people with tons of resources and people with no resources. And it's the same thing, man. It's like, but can I do this? And the answer is yes, you can. Because if you look at the scheme of things, they sent someone to the moon in the 70s, right? If they can do that, then I'm sure you can start a business, because the resources we have is endless, right? And I think the dangerous thing, for Maynard, maybe you would agree, and I'd like to hear your intake on this, is there's tons of noise also out there. So what do you take and what do you leave? Like there's a lot of information, but there's not a lot of wisdom almost. It's like this thing of like people are craving for wisdom, because I open up my phone and I've got 50,000 Facebook messages and we've got all these notifications popping up all over. Like, how do I get rid of those noise? And how I help people is to get them back to focus, getting back to a place where there's absolute focus, not multitasking, but rather just doing one thing brilliantly at a time, laser sharp focus. So it's more of helping business people to just sort of reset themselves, refocus, and help them to move forward. So yeah, it's an absolute honor to do that.
That makes 100% sense for me, because one thing that is completely overwhelming for me, whether it is me putting content out into the world, publishing things into the void, hoping that a faceless mass of people will find it, whether it is that or whether it is drinking from the fire hose of content that is coming my way, both of those is, for me at least, I don't know for you or for anybody else, is completely anxiety inducing. And when you want to either add value by putting some things out there like you're doing, or you want to work on yourself, educate yourself, and become a student of lifelong learning, like we're hoping a lot of people do, then both of those can be completely overwhelming. And I have found the best way for me to actually, exactly like you said just now, make a meaningful difference in a world where there's millions and millions of potential audience members is to pick one and start building a relationship with that person. And change will flow through that relationship to that person via content or via a podcast or via some kind of a connection. And the other way as well. Like if I want to learn something, is to pick someone and build a relationship with them. And of course, the internet helps with that, and the accessibility helps with that. It can also be debilitating because there's so many people to choose from. but pick somebody and build a relationship with them like you would have done in I want to say like in olden times, where you invite somebody for coffee and just do that. And that for me, okay, so that's what I'm learning from you. So I have one more question for you before we switch gears a little bit and talk about the podcast more. Is I don't know if you ever thought about this, but are you like, do you have like a vision for your career? Are there, like, when you think about yourself in 20 years, the way you work, why you work, the type of work that you do, is that even something that comes up that you think about? Do you have a picture like that in your head, or do you just say no, things change too fast, or like what? How do you think about that?
For sure, man. For me, it's going back to super basics. You just mentioned something interesting, like almost like going back to the old times. And there's a lot we can learn from previous generations, and it's almost that simplicity. We have access to so much, but if you can take all that and just make it simple, it's very, very powerful. So for me, it's not about what's my vision so much in 5 years, because the last couple of years we realized that things can change very fast. So for me, it's going back to the root core of what is important to me. And I make it very, very crystal clear, because it's almost like there's a lot of, we're like in this murky waters where we're in autopilot. And yes, I want to have, like when I speak to people, they'll tell me, I want to have financial freedom. Okay, why? and how much? Like, get crystal clear on what that is exactly. So for me, man, it's like being a good dad, being a good husband. That's it. What can I do? What can I do to be both those? What resources do I need? So for me, it's like, it's in the moment, and it's super crystal clear, and it's something that will never change. I want to be a good dad for the rest of my life. I want to be a good dad, a good husband for the rest of my life, right? So that will never change. So it's going back to that values and say, well, how can I serve that? What can I do to serve that cause? So yeah, it will then change, because that's exciting. It's exciting to change, but the core values will always be the same. And that's how
that makes sense. That makes sense.
But with that being said, talking about content, man, talking about putting things out there, what was then the big reason that you decided, well, let's do a podcast? Like, let's get this out. What was that all about? Right.
I'm scared to give you the true reason, because it's a little bit of there's a lot of self-interest about that, because there's a lot of people that I have kind of access to, but not so much that I just learn from them in the normal run of things, because they either live too far or we don't know each other that well. So I thought to myself, what would be a good opportunity for me to make contact with? I have at least like 20, 30 people in mind, you being one of them, and thinking that, but if I start like a podcast, won't that be the best excuse to invite people and spend an hour with them? And then hopefully they enjoy it, and hopefully they get to plug some of their projects as well and get some value out of it. But that was the one big reason, is for me to just find an excuse to talk to people that fascinates me, that I'm interested in. And hopefully along the way, I can watch the episode back or make some notes and learn some things, as opposed to me paying thousands of rands, which is also a good idea, for a coach or business coach. Why can't I just learn from the people that I already have access to, record it in the process, and send it out to people outside there, and they can have its value as well? So that was one big reason for me. It's a little bit self-interested kind of consideration. And then the other idea was to create a place where people can come together and have context, have familiarity with our business, with KRAFT Learning Lab. Of course, we also want to invite people into learning journeys, into a little bit more intentional learning and development experiences. But it's difficult to just jump into something when you don't know the people, or you don't know what they're about. And this is a way for us to build trust and build rapport with pretty much strangers out there. Hopefully they find us and they listen to me, they listen to you, and a bunch of other people that we also have that come on as guests. And we can build that kind of connection with them, relationship with them, and then hopefully draw people into more meaningful learning experiences. So I think those are the two main reasons.
You had a couple of incredible guests already, right? Which was amazing.
Yeah.
There's a couple that stood out for me. What sort of stood out for you, like on this journey so far? I know it's still short journey, but what sort of stood out
Yeah.
to get? Yeah.
So what is interesting is I batch recorded a bunch of guests. So I've already interviewed and recorded about 6 or 7 guests, but we've only published 3. So we're publishing bi-weekly at the moment. We're putting it out on YouTube and Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. People can find it everywhere in between audio, video, whichever way you prefer to engage with the content. But I've now already spent an hour talking to a couple of people more than what the public has access to. And what is interesting for me, to answer your question, is how vastly different people come to this one idea of building a meaningful career. As creatives, as business people, whether they're makers or managers or whatever it is that they do, there is absolutely no set way of doing this. And I think if you force me to find like a golden thread that runs through all of them, it's exactly this, what me and you talked about not a moment ago, about being open to change, about embracing this growth mindset idea. So with all of them, whether it was Jackie van Niekerk, who heads up Attack Limited, which is one of South Africa, like even internationally, one of the biggest property development businesses in the world. She is the CEO. She's one of the youngest CEOs to ever be in that position. When I asked her about what is the most important thing for you to learn in your world right now, she said being open to change, being open to learn from people. So that for me, it just blew my mind. And I also spoke with one of the most self-driven people I've ever met, which is Amy Hopkins. She's just outside here of where I am in Cape Town. And she said exactly the same thing. And she has been transitioning her career almost on an annual basis between different sectors, from fitness to cooking to creative agency to influencing other brands and all kinds of things. And she said the exact same thing. Tegan Phillips, who's an adventure and endurance cyclist, who is now training to ride her bike from Cape Town to Cairo in just a month's time, also said the same thing, is to not focus on what we've done in the past so much that it inhibits us from taking on new challenges in future, and just having that openness. So for me, it's been fascinating to talk to all of these people. We have some exciting people still coming up, and I'm so excited to share some of them as the publication date comes up. But yeah, those conversations has been enlightening and encouraging, to say the least.
I love the fact that it's not this. Well, in a lot of ways, there are gurus and experts in their field for sure. I mean, you just mentioned like incredible people, but I like the fact it's relatable. That to me is like whenever I watch a podcast with Elon Musk, it's interesting, but I can't apply much because it's just not right. Where for me, it's more about if I do spend my time. Right, like, and that's the word, right? Spending time. See, so people are really attached to time. I want to learn something, and it's incredible. Where, I mean, let's all be honest here. Like when you're in a queue at Checkers and 2 people are talking, it's interesting to hear other people's conversations because we actually just want to hear from people that's like us, like here in South Africa, or it can be international, but it's people we can relate to and say, if that person can do that, I can do that. And sometimes when you speak to this serious gurus, it's like, yeah, but that's Elon Musk, right? Like, how can I do anything that, I can't send people to Mars. It's just way, relatable is what I really enjoy, what you're doing here, Maynard. So what can we expect then? I'm so excited for you. Like, what's ahead? Where do you see this go? Like, what's going to happen?
Well, I think first of all, I want to build a community, like sincerely build a community around content that really adds value to people. So we have the podcast going. It's baby steps at a time. Our newsletter called The Learnist is out now, and we're building our database on a weekly basis. So that's exciting. And I try to share some of what I'm learning from the podcast and other places there as well, and plug people in with some resources that will be specifically relevant for creatives who want to embrace this idea of continuous learning, who want to make sure that they work on themselves as they're also doing the work. So the newsletter is going. And then, of course, there's a bunch of resources on our website. I'm super excited. We have a new course launching in the next week called The Moments That Matter, which is a 100% free video-based course delivered via email. I think we built 5 episodes, and you can subscribe at any time. And then you're on an automated learning journey. And as I said, you don't pay anything for it. And there's some hefty and weighty content in there to help people understand the whole idea, the basics behind customer experience. So if you just take an example like that course that we built and put out into the world, if somebody is working at their business, or they are a designer, or they code, or they're doing whatever, and they want to understand a little bit about this idea of how do I deliver better experiences to my customers, there's a bunch of value just in that thing that'll help you get set up. It's not going to make you a 10-year veteran or expert, but it's going to teach you the basics and point you in the right direction to start learning the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So I'm excited about that. We're putting things like that out into the world, and that one is launching next week. I'm super excited about that. But those are some of the things that we build, and then hopefully more in-depth, more long-term learning journeys within the next couple of months, where we can actually walk a journey with somebody for, say, 3 months, 6 months around a specific topic. And instead of quitting your job, paying $100,000, going to university for another 3 years, you can plug into some of those journeys and really learn from experts about how to, develop the skills that'll take you to your next career transition.
I love that. And you just mentioned something there, and something that I'm quite an expert at, if I may say it myself, not because I'm a guru, just because I worked so long at this, is sales. And you said experience. Yes. And let me tell you, here's the crazy thing, man. Sales is dead. People hate it when you get sold to, right? I mean, who here loves it when they receive a call that interrupts you, and it's someone that wants to sell you something, right? Everyone loves those calls, right? No, everyone hates those calls. Okay, exactly. So, but people love to buy things. I mean, you see it all the time. People love buying things. I mean, I'm sitting here with an Apple Watch. Why? I don't even know, right? I don't need one, okay? But I buy it because we like buying things. And it's all about that customer experience. People remember how you make them feel, right? So if you're a designer,
that is true.
Sales, if you're working for a company, you're a business owner, that's what people are going to remember, is how you made them feel, not what you said, right? It's the feeling that people remember, right? So,
and even that's what we're trying to build with this, is to relate with people and build that affinity, even if it's through content.
Yeah. So that course you guys giving for free, people will be ridiculous not to pick that up, right? Because that's the first step.
Hope so.
That's the first step. So,
yes,
for sure.
All right. Well, I have two more questions for you before we sign off. We're almost out of time, but this is something I'm in. This is where the self-interested part of myself comes in when I speak with guests or co-hosts. In your case, so I want to know. I want to know what you think. Please be as honest as you can. Like, as you speak with people all across the world, as you do the work that you're doing, and I know you're also an avid learner. So as you consume content and you look at what's out there, in your opinion, what do you think is the most important skill in the workplace today to have? If you don't have it, to work on, to develop in yourself. If you have to name one thing, what would that one thing be?
A high income skill. Right, so whatever that skill is, Maynard.
What on earth is a high income skill? What is that?
Let me explain, right? So for me, no degree, none of that, right? But one thing I do have, I worked on a skill that no matter what, I will have the ability to make money, right? And for me, it was sales, because people are buying and selling stuff every single day. I can literally take my skill, and let's say I lose everything. That's the question I ask myself. What skill do I need? If I wake up tomorrow and I've got nothing, got the clothes on my back, right? What then? And for me is I worked very, very hard on a skill, high income skill, like selling. Selling is a skill, as example. And for me, if I lose everything today, I can literally go to any place and go, I'll work for commission for free. I'll make you money. It won't cost you anything. I'll just make you money. Sounds good? When can I start? Right? I will have the ability to generate an income. And that's just because, man, for me, it goes back to my values. Being the ability to provide to family. For that, I need an income. So that's why my skill was a high income skill. This can be anything. For a creative, right? It can be, where things are going now. As long as it's a skill that, depending on your values, right? if you're into, you know what, non-profits, that's cool, whatever the case might be. But go to your values, look at that. For me, it's like I want to provide. That's one of my big, whys in my life. So it's a skill that will give me an income. So for me, it's all about what is that skill, and ask yourself, if I lose everything, like, do I have a skill that I can go to a company and say, I will give you results, right? Because that's what companies want. They want results, right? If you go to the CEO, I'll give you this result, and I can have an impact on a company. So that skill can be anything, man. But at least if you can give a result to a company, anything like that, a skill, like a high income skill. So that's
that makes sense.
Skill. Yeah.
That makes 100% sense. As you're talking, I'm obviously thinking, what is my high income skills? What was it in the past? What is it now? What will it probably be in the future? And what will be the next one that I can work on? So that is super interesting. I love that. Okay, I think a final question. So I ask this to everybody, but what are you learning right now? What are you willing to become a beginner again at this stage in your life? You've obviously been around the block a couple of times. I don't think sales is your only high income skill. I also don't think it's your first or your last one. You're a veteran at this. But what are you learning right now as if from scratch?
So, as you know, I'm always learning. I always have a mentor. I literally 2 weeks ago, I finished with my previous mentor. He was Jim Miller, who's incredible coach. Not for everyone. He's quite brutal, but he's very honest, right? But learning that, for me, this to me, like, man, it goes again back to my value. There's different parts in my life that is important to me. It's health, right? Wealth. Without health, wealth doesn't mean anything, right? Like, so health, wealth, and then love and happiness. So that's the three things for me. When it comes to wealth, like I said, I got that high income skill, so I worked on that. For me now, I'm actually working on health, believe it or not. So I'm actually working at a skill where I'm working with someone that's tomorrow morning at 6:15. I'm meeting him on Zoom. He's from the UK, and the skill of health, Maynard, that is my next skill, right? So because I've got the love with my family, I've got the wealth. I'm not saying I'm mega rich. I'm just saying, I'm happy, right, in that area. But now it's health. Okay, so that's the three things for me. So it's the one leg that I did not master yet, and I'll probably add some more to that. But that's the third one I want to get sorted out for sure. Yeah,
I'm sure once you've got that settled, then there'll be something else, something next that you'll be able to tackle. But that is such a great breakdown. Thanks for that.
Awesome. Perfect.
Rupert, that is us. That is our conversation. That's all the time we have. And I appreciate it so much that you came and you co-hosted this episode with me.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully we get to do some of this again in future. Good luck to everything that you're doing. It was such a pleasure to spend this time with you.
Awesome. Looking forward to the next episodes, man. I will be listening. For everyone listening, go pick up that free course. I can't believe these guys are giving it away for free. It's ridiculous. So go pick it up. Okay. So that's my little bit of selling for today, right? That's not how you do it, but there you go. Maynard, have a fantastic
Thanks so
day.
much, Rupert. See ya.
Cool.